Hey, Happy New Year, everyone. We did it. We made it to 2023. We are here, and 'tis the season of New Year's resolutions, right? Everyone is trying to be better and more productive than ever. So, one of the things that includes, hopefully, for a lot of people, hopefully that includes you, hopefully that's why you're watching, is that you want to know how to make your marketing bigger and better than ever in 2023. You want to make sure that your website actually gets results and returns on the investment that you are putting into it, because no one knows better than me how much of an investment that requires, certainly of money, but also of time, especially if you are creating your own content. So I've got 6 resolutions that you can make for 2023. There's like one thing in here that you should do once or twice a year, right? But most of these are things that you really should be doing on a regular basis, at least once a week, some of them even daily. It can really help make those a habit, right? Because that's what resolutions are all about. It's not like I'm just going to do this thing once. It's got to be a habit. It's got to be a lifestyle change. So here's what you need to change or keep doing if you're already doing some of these things. Hopefully, you're already doing some of these things. Content calendar, first and foremost. Come up with a schedule, stick to it, know when you are going to be publishing content so that you've got it ready. Your calendar does not have to include when you're going to create the content. It can. I'll get into that that's my tip number 2. But first and foremost, you have to know when you're going to be publishing it. Knowing when you're going to be publishing will help you know and plan for when you need to be creating the content so that it's ready to be published when it needs to get published. So that's first and foremost. Make and actually use your editorial calendar. Don't just say that you're going to be publishing on these certain days. Actually, really refer to that and stick to that calendar. It can also help to plan out a few months ahead, at least 1 month ahead. Once a month is a good time to sit down and go, what topics am I covering this month? I've done it for clients as much as for 3 months, right? So for the whole quarter, we know all the blog posts, the topics they're going to be covering, the list of keywords to go with each topic. So that way, all they have to do is sit down and write it. It's basic. It's not quite outlined for them. It doesn't go that far, but it's pretty close. Once you've got all those keywords laid out, you know all the big points you want to hit in there. So that makes it so much easier to sit down and write because you already know what you're going to be writing about. So that leads to number 2, right? Set aside time to write. Writing does not just happen. Take it from a professional writer. It does not just happen. You cannot say, "Oh, I'll get around to it when I'm done with XYZ." It has to take priority, right? I'm not saying it has to take priority over everything. It's not always your number 1 priority, but it does have to become a priority at some point, and you have to know when that point is. You have to know how long is it going to take you to write a blog post? When are you going to set aside that time? And again, you have to actually stick to it. It has to take up space in your calendar. Don't allow people to schedule meetings or bother you with phone calls or anything during that time. That is your time to write. So do it. This is especially beneficial if you can do it every day, because again, then it becomes a habit, and habits are so much harder to break than resolutions. So if you can, and I know this is not possible for everyone, but if you can, try and set aside the same time, even if it's just 1 hour, right? 1 hour a day, same hour every day, preferably, and in the same place. So that way, at that time, when you sit down in that place to get your writing done, your brain kind of kicks in because it knows, oh, this is our time now when we write. And it's going to make it so much easier for you to actually sit down and write, because your brain will get into gear so much faster because you will have trained it to say, this is what we're doing here at this time on this day. So do that if you can. I know it's a lot. I know an hour every day is a lot. And there are so many different people and things saying that you need to be doing an hour of this a day, an hour of that a day, and then an hour here and there. And next thing you know, it's like, how do I get 3 days into 24 hours, right? It just doesn't work. But if you can, set aside some time for writing. And even if you publish every week, right? So if you set aside even half an hour to write every day, right? You can do some research one day. You can write the outline the next day. You can write another section on day 3, right? That blog is going to come together before you know it. So absolutely take advantage of that. Again, habit is harder to break than a resolution. So Make it happen if you can. If not, just do what you can, but you have to set aside that time. Plan to sit down and write. Don't just assume that it will happen. Tip number 3, conduct research before creating your marketing content. So first, you got to research those keywords. Make sure that they are actually you got to hit that content gap, right? So a content gap is when there's interest in a topic, people are searching for it, but there's not already a ton of content using that keyword. That indicates that people are looking for information and they're not finding it. That is your window of opportunity right there. That's the topic that you really want to create and put on your blog and get the most out of it. So that's first up, is do that keyword research and make sure the keywords are integrated throughout your content. Then you want to actually research the topic. And I'm not saying you don't know your stuff. Obviously, you're an expert in your industry, but you want to make sure that you are covering everything there is to cover on a given topic. Which reminds me, going back to the content calendar, one of the things that people ask me all the time is, how often should I be blogging? And if you are creating those really long, in-depth blog posts that Google loves, and honestly, readers love them too. I know people say people don't have time to read that much, but the data does show that people do spend more time engaging with that longer content. And if you make it easy for them to find exactly what they want, for the people who do want to get in and get that bit of information and get out, make it really easy for them to skim so they can do that. So if you write those longer, in-depth content, you can get away with publishing every other week instead of every week. I do still encourage every week, but there is kind of a trade-off there, right? It does take longer to really research and write those longer, in-depth pieces of content. So maybe only go every other week, and that's fine. But again, have that consistency, right? How frequently you publish does not matter as much as making sure that you are consistent with whatever schedule you end up going with. So absolutely keep that in mind. That's not to say that every blog post you write has to be 2,000, 3,000 words long. But if you have the occasional topic where you write 600, 1,000 words and that's it, you've said everything there is to say, leave it at that. Don't write more fluff just for the sake of reaching an arbitrary word count. That's not going to help anyone. So you're going to research and make sure that you are covering everything there is to cover on that topic. That's how you get those long, in-depth blog posts that cover, they become the ultimate guide on that topic. Google loves it. Real people love those pieces of content. So do all your research just to make sure you're not missing anything. Make sure you've covered everything there is to cover on that topic. Then you're going to publish it. Then number 4 is you are going to distribute your content. Don't assume that if you build it, they will come, right? We're going to get into SEO in the next tip, and that can help with people just finding your content seemingly out of nowhere. Obviously, it's not out of nowhere. You put the work into it, but it does kind of feel like, clients just come out of nowhere, and it's a great feeling. So that can help, but you got to give it a little help first. You got to distribute your content. You got to put it out on social media. You have to put it out in your newsletter, let people know when there's a new blog. Backlink strategies are great too, right? Get out there, and if people can let people know that you've got this new piece of content, maybe they want to send a link your way, a backlink, that will help your SEO as well. So the backlinks will help your SEO, and then those anything you can do as far as social media, your newsletter, to get organic traffic to your blog is going to also help your SEO. That helps. It tells Google that there's already interest in this topic. So Google goes, oh, people are already reading this. There is interest here. This is valuable content. So that can help your SEO. So number 5, SEO, right? So you want to do all that. You want to distribute it. You want to get those backlinks. You also want to conduct an SEO audit. This is something you should do at least once a year, preferably more than that, preferably more like once a quarter. An SEO audit is when you get a tool, it crawls your website, it looks for all those problem areas, and then generates a report saying, here are the things that you need to look at. It checks for broken links. It checks for thin content, missing content. So that is something that you should be doing on a regular basis. If you've never done one, first of the year is a great time to do it, or second of the year as it is, right? So the beginning of the year, January, is a great time to do an SEO audit. take a look at your website and see what needs cleaning up. But again, this is something that really should be done once a quarter. So if there are any issues with your website, they don't have time to build and really have a detrimental effect on your SEO. So if you don't know how to do an SEO audit, you can reach out to me. I do SEO audits for my clients. And then I can analyze the data for you and make recommendations about what you should change based on the report that I get. So next up, you're going to research your keywords, right? So this is another thing that should be done on a regular basis. Anytime you create content, you're going to want to research your keywords first, make sure they're relevant. But you also should have a list of keywords that you use all the time, right? They're your standard keywords, especially when it comes to, your business, your title, the products or services that you provide, right? So for me, writing services, SEO, content marketing strategy, those are all pretty standard for me. Take a look at those keywords, research them, make sure that they are still worth targeting. And if not, maybe you want to find some synonyms that make for better keywords. Next up, you're going to conduct a content audit. Look at all of your content on your website, see what's getting traffic, see what's not getting traffic. If something is not getting traffic, you can update it, republish it, give it new life. If it's just so old and so out of date that it doesn't make sense to do that anymore, maybe just delete it. I'm not necessarily a fan of deleting old content just because you work so hard to create that content, right? It can be painful to just delete whole blog posts and whole pages. But that being said, there's something to be said for the fact that, Google's crawl budget, Google can only crawl so much. So it can help Google and help your SEO to clean up those old and delete or at least unpublish that old content that is no longer getting you anywhere. So do that content audit and also that's a great chance to look at what's working, because there are going to be some trends with the content that is getting good traffic, and there are going to be some trends with the content that's not getting great traffic. So see what's working, what's not, and take this time to adjust your content strategy as necessary. And finally, last but not least, resolve to repurpose your content, right? So again, some of those older pieces of content that are not getting as much traffic, maybe you can give them new love. You can republish them, especially if you get busy and you don't have time to create a whole new blog post this week or this month or, whatever. Republishing an old blog post is a great way to get the most out of that blog as long as it's still relevant. And saves you time. You can also, again, put it out on social media, break it up into snippets, put it out on social media, put it on Instagram, break it into different sections. And then each section can be a section on an infographic that you then share. People love infographics and they get a lot of engagement. So that's another way to really take advantage of that. And then videos, right? So I do this all the time where the video that I create covers the same topic that I cover on my blog, because some people are going to watch the video and some people are going to read the blog. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? I know there's lots of different types of content that we feel like we need to create in order to get in front of as many people as possible. But that doesn't mean that you're covering a million different topics in 1 week, right? You can have one theme for the week or even for the month, and that's what you cover. And it just makes things so much easier. And with video, you can then take the audio from the video and turn it into a podcast. So then people who want to listen to the podcast can do that, and people who want to watch the video can watch the video. Just be careful if you do have a lot of visual elements, especially visual aids in your video. That might need some extra explanation for your listeners, for the people who are only listening to the podcast. But that is a tip. Repurpose your content, get the most out of it, share it regularly, just to make sure that, again, you put too much time and effort into creating all that content. You don't want it to just sit there and gather dust. So that is it. That is everything that I have for you. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. You can read about more content like this over at my website at avwritingservices.com. I do cover this topic in more depth in my blog. And you can also reach me directly at info@avwritingservices.com. That's it. Have a great week and happy blogging, everyone, and a happy, happy new year.